Hi everyone, it's Mariah Russell with A Journey of Beauty. I realized this week I haven't been doing as many videos as I normally do, and I really enjoy doing the videos. I like getting out and talking to everyone. I've actually been focusing on finishing up writing my book right now. And so one of the big things that I've been focusing on in this book is the power of telling our stories. And I know a lot of people don't tell their stories. Some people are ashamed of their stories. Some people are, not quite ready to tell their stories. But I think it's really important that we do tell our stories. Because when we tell our stories, what we do is we create a connection with the people who hear our stories to know that they're not alone. So when I can talk about my personal raw, vulnerable experiences and share them, then other people who may have thought that they were the only person who had ever experienced something like this can hear my story and say, I'm not alone. Other people have experienced this. And so that's the importance of telling our stories. And we do have to tell our stories in a way that feels good to us. So one of the things is that Me Too campaign that went around a couple months back was very powerful because so many women started to share their stories. And even if they didn't tell their whole story, they just said, I've had a story that's like that in the past. Me too. This has happened. This is happening. This is real. And that campaign was precarious in the sense that it was re-traumatizing for a lot of people. People were not necessarily ready to tell their stories, but felt they had to tell their stories because so many people were not believing their truth. And so whether the story that you're telling is about a traumatic experience, such as, sexual assault, but it doesn't matter what the story is. As we tell our stories, we allow our truth to come out, and we tell other people. It's not that it normalizes it, but it says, I am not alone, and I have gone through this. I have survived. I have thrived, and you can too. And so I invite everybody to just take a moment and really think about, what stories do you have to share? Maybe it's a story of success. Maybe it's a story of failure. It doesn't really matter what the story is, but what is the story that you have to get out there? And how can other people grow and learn from knowing that they are not alone? And when we share our stories, if we start to see a lot of similar stories, such as in that Me Too campaign, then we say there is a real problem. And that's not to say that sexual assault wouldn't be a real problem if only a few people were experiencing it. However, because of the silencing of so many voices, when people come forward and tell their story, they are often afraid, whether this is true or in their head, and it's both, honestly, they wouldn't be afraid to tell their story and be dismissed. And that's one of the biggest fears that people have when telling our stories, is that I'm not going to be believed, that no one's going to listen to my story, they're going to call me a liar. But as we start to tell our stories, and as we start to listen to the stories that we hear of other people, then we can say, one, I'm not alone, but two, this is happening. And even if it's not happening to me, for instance, I will never have stories as a person of color that are from my personal experience, because I'm not. But I can sit there and I can exquisitely listen and give my attention to people who do live the life of a person of color, so people of color, right? I can listen to their stories and I can say, that is a story of an experience I will never have. And your story, your experience is valid and true and real for you. Therefore, what can I learn about how I live the world and how I interface with the world based on the lessons that I have learned from your lived, embodied truth? And so as we share our stories, we break down barriers, we break down walls. But it's not just that we have to share our stories, we also have to listen to the stories that are being told by others. Because as we hear these stories, we now broaden our perspective in a way that we could not broaden it before. We can do our very best to say, I am human, and I want to have the broadest perspective that I could have, right? And I don't have time or space or the ability to physically see the world from the millions and billions of different perspectives that exist. However, when I listen to people sharing their stories, I get just a little glimpse, I get a window into their reality where I can say, that is a reality that exists. This is a new perspective. This is a new way of interacting and interfacing in the world based on things that I don't and probably can't understand. There are some that I could, and like I said, I will never understand what it's like to live the world life of a person of color. I will never understand what it's like to live life as a man. I will never understand what it's like to live the life of somebody who was born and raised in poverty. I can interface with these people, I can hear their stories, I can interact with them, but I will never have that lived experience. However, through their stories, I can start to understand. And the more I understand, the more my perspective broadens, and the more compassionate I can be, because it's no longer just what I know and what I see, but it's what we all know and what we all see. So I encourage you guys to get out there, share your stories, listen to other people's stories, and have a great day. If you would love to have a coaching session with me, click on the link below. I'd love to do a free intro call. I use a lot of stories and mythology in my coaching work. I think that's one of the things that makes it particularly unique, is that weaving that story is really about how do we pull stories and mythology from time immemorial into the present to learn things that we just haven't figured out yet. And through that story, through that journey, you really start to create these amazing realizations of who you are and how you show up in this world. So have a great day. Bye-bye.